It's by no means a stretch to suggest that same-name video game reboots have become commonplace in the last 2 console generations. Titles like God of War, Tomb Raider, Doom, and many others have made older franchises relevant again by placing familiar names in new universes while merging modern gameplay mechanics and graphics with established characters unencumbered by the previous game's lore. You only need to look at the critical and commercial success of these games to understand why this formula has become widespread. Although releasing 2 different games with the exact same name on the same console is probably taking things a little too far, EA. While certainly not the first game to do it, Ninja Gaiden and Microsoft's experimental cross-platform FPS Shadowrun are just 2 same-name reboots from earlier in the 21st century, Ubisoft's 2008 Prince of Persia is definitely one of the more striking reboots, mainly thanks to its distinctive cel-shaded art style. Jordan Mechner's 1989 side-scrolling Prince of Persia, which was remade in 2007 under the name Prince of Persia Classic, was without doubt way ahead of its time, but gameplay-wise the iteration we're talking about today has more in common with Ubi's own Prince of Persia Sands of Time trilogy from 2003, a series of fantastic 3D action platformers that are still worth playing today, although you might want to skip Warrior Within unless you're really into Godsmack. The main differences come in the previously mentioned art style and Elika, your kind of magical princess companion who aids you in combat, acts as a double jump, serves as a lore guide, helps you when you get lost, and basically saves you from death in many different ways throughout the game. But that's not to say the prince is useless. Voiced by Golden Era Nolan North at his northeast, you climb, grapple, swing and slide around palaces, temples and towers using a traversal system that at its best feels smooth and balletic, but at its worst feels somehow both clunky and too automated at the same time. The world you explore is split into 4. You have 4 starting areas, which are each split into 4 further levels that are accessed by gaining one of 4 upgrades. Each area is served by one of 4 bosses, the Hunter, the Alchemist, the Concubine and the Warrior, whom you fight at the end of each level and kill in its own separate area after finishing the 4 levels before it. Special shout out must go to the Alchemist, who has possibly the most cliched bad guy dialogue of all time.
It is not that you cannot understand, it is that you do not even question.
Prince of Persia's gameplay loop is pretty simple. Get to the end of each area to heal the fertile ground and rid said area corruption, then explore the beautified area and collect the light seeds needed to get the skills necessary for opening up the new areas. While all these powers aren't really up to much, special mention must be made for the wing skill. It is genuinely atrocious, playing like a gummy ship section from Kingdom Hearts if it was somehow made even worse. But regardless, healing and exploring is a neat concept, but once the novelty of wandering around a prettier area has worn off, you start to realise that you're doing the same things you've just done for the healing. And it can't be ignored either. You need 540 light seeds to access the final skill, so you'll need to do a lot of exploration outside of the critical path. Fortunately, the traversal is the game's best feature, but what's not the game's best feature is the combat. With a decent combo system and a functional parry mechanic, what could have been a welcome way of breaking up the platforming instead devolves into a framey, drawn-out mess thanks to technical hiccups and substandard boss designs. There are no weapon upgrades, no new moves to learn as you progress, and you fight the same 4 bosses during most of the game. When you consider the fact that you have to fight one of these 4 at the end of every level, you realise that the combat becomes more a chore than a nice change of pace. Now the fights themselves aren't taxing, which if anything just adds to the boredom. Anytime the prince is in trouble, a QTE involving one of the face buttons appears. Press the correct button and you carry on as if nothing ever happened, but in the unlikely event that you miss it, the enemy simply regains some of its health. To be honest, the greatest enemy the prince faces in the game is the camera, as it switches quickly from shot to shot, each frame rarely more useful than the last. This leads to frustrating sequences where combos are cut short as your enemy is thrown to the edge of the arena, which triggers a cutscene forcing both the prince and boss into the middle to begin the pattern once more. On the odd occasion, you do encounter enemy spawn points during your light seed harvest. However, if you get there quick enough, you're able to chop down the spawn point before anything emerges. It's a great way to reward quick and smooth traversal, and nipping your problem in the bud feels pretty damn good. Although, if you don't make it in time, most enemies are sent packing with a simple combo, so it's not too much of a problem. But even with all its faults, the combat is an absolute joy when compared to the awful crank puzzles. Mercifully, there are only a few in the game, but not only do they not make use of what's great about Prince of Persia, stopping all fluid platforming and exploration dead in its tracks, they actively magnify its worst features. A poor camera, super slow animations and a reliance on a sometimes teleporting Elika all combine to create the most infuriating sections in the game. And it's a shame because I remember playing and finishing Prince of Persia 10 years ago and enjoying it, but its action set pieces have been crushed by Uncharted 2 and its combat pummeled by Arkham Asylum, and both of these were released less than a year after Prince of Persia. But it's not all bad. The silky smooth platforming when at its best is still worth checking out, while the cel-shaded art direction and arabesque architecture make the game look great for its age. But whether it's worth playing or not on consoles depends on your situation. It can't be played on PS4 and is definitely not worth dragging a PS3 out for, but the 360 version is backwards compatible with the Xbox One, so if you can find a cheap box copy then go for it. At the time of this recording, Prince of Persia is available for a bargain price in the UK on PSN, but it is a bit too much at nearly $20 in the US. 2008's Prince of Persia is a decent title whose mechanics and combat have been somewhat dulled by the sands of time, which, coincidentally, may be the best place to start if you want to check out the best this franchise has to offer.